Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Friday Ramblings. And it is time for the much anticipated second part of our look at Marvel's Captain Marvel Legacy. Now, we had a little bit of a delay. As I said in the last video, things happen sometimes, and we have to do things in the moment, but it's all good. Moving forward now, back to our regularly scheduled rambling topic, which is we're going to give you a quick breakdown of Genis Vell, the third person in Marvel to use the Captain Marvel codename. Now, why are we doing this? Well, because one, I love Genis Vell's story. As a character, and all the things he went through, especially in the later volumes of his book, solo book, which we'll touch on in a second. But more importantly, because after an extended period of being killed off, I know, spoilers, but hey, we kind of touched on that before, with the fact there were others. We have got the long-awaited return of Genus. That's right, in the current Captain Marvel series, starring Carol Danvers, Genus reappeared looking more like he did in his early years than when he passed on, as part of a grander adventure involving all the different people that had used the Captain Marvel identity, kind of being brought together against their will, evil bad guy. I'm not going to give you too many spoilers because it is a very recent story arc, and I do want to encourage people to read current comic runs, not just the old ones, but especially the new ones, because these are the books that are still in circulation and need to remain in circulation, because we don't read the current books, companies have no money to stay in business, and then we have no comics. Seriously, that would, don't get me wrong, if you just really, really can't stand the modern era, by all means, I'm not forcing you to do it out of some sense of guilt, but I am saying, by all means, if you want really detailed reviews and stories, so you don't have to read stuff that you're interested in, you're going to have to go somewhere else. Because we're here to entice you. So, that's all you're really getting from the current Captain Marvel story arc is Genus is back, looking like he did in his early years. We're not 100% sure exactly how and why yet, but he is, in the coming months, about to get a mini-series highlighting him that will hopefully answer these questions and give him a spot in the current Marvel world, universe, Earth 616, as it is officially designated. So let's discuss his past and how he got from being a character concept to being killed off and left for dead for 16 years. Yeah, I told you he'd been dead for a while. As we touched on before, Genis Vell was created by Ron Marz and Ron Lim. Specifically, he first appeared in Silver Surfer Volume 3, Annual Number 6 in 1993, using the codename of Legacy. He then appeared in various Marvel titles in 94 and 95, based around the cosmic side of Marvel superheroes, which basically at the time was Silver Surfer, although there was an anthology book that he also appeared in called Cosmic Powers, as well as a couple others. He then starred in his own volume of Captain Marvel. This would officially be Volume 3. Volume 1 being the original Marvels, long-running solo book. Volume 2 being a one-shot featuring the second Captain Marvel, Monica Rambeau. It's the way volume numbering and stuff works in comic books. It's weird. Like, you could write a 1-2 issue miniseries, one-shot thing, and it's a volume as far as legal indicia and indexing go. But anyway, it is a thing. Now, Volume 3 was written by Fabian Nizia and featured the art of Ed Benes, and ran throughout late 95-96, getting abruptly canceled at 6 issues, although Fabian had it plotted out through issue 12. The subsequent volume, Nizia would have a chance to summarize what he would have done in these issues during a single issue fill-in duty. This would be volume 14 of issue 14 of volume 4. For those of you who want to track it down, or at least want to keep track of the specifics. So we do technically know what Fabian had planned for the rest of his year 1 on the book, which is not something all writers necessarily get to do. Legacy would then later appear in Avengers Unplugged number 5, another anthology-style book. And then after a single appearance in Silver Surfer, Genus would not appear for another 2 years until he was included in a new Adam Warlock series for 4 issues. Again, Adam Warlock's one of those cosmic characters who tends to have a book that runs for a while, it gets canceled, a few years pass, they give him another attempt. He occasionally shows up in big events, team books, like he was a founding member of the Modern Guardian series that we talked about before. He had an Infinity Watch team for a while. Adam Warlock's a lot to explain. We'll try one day. Finally, after an appearance in the Avengers Forever miniseries, there was the Volume 4 Captain Marvel started in late 99 and would last for 35 issues until fall of 2002. Volume 4 was written by Peter David, who would also write Volume 5 when it won a You Decide fan poll campaign for which characters should get a chance at getting a refreshed title. Volume 5 would last 25 issues before being canceled in 2004 due to low sales. So, there you go. Now, Peter David did use the number 1 rebooting, even though there wasn't a huge gap of time between the cancellation and the return. I think the poll had actually started before the final issue of Volume 4 hit, though I'm not 100% sure on that timing. Don't go to take it as biblical truth. But there was a very small window. Peter David did use this chance to kind of tweak the direction he was taking the book in, though it still does have a pretty coherent flow, since it is one writer. This means that Peter David wrote 60 issues starring Genus. Thus, he is, crunch the data, the writer who has handled the most appearances of Genus, and thus why it is awesome that he is also the one penning the soon-to-be-released miniseries. Peter didn't create the character, but he did most of the life storying of Genus so far. So, what is Genus's life story? Well, as we've briefly touched on in the last video, Genus is the, to use an old term, test tube baby of Eternal Elysius, who combined some DNA samples she had of her deceased lover, Vell, with her own to create the son they never had the chance to have. She then artificially aged Genus to adulthood so that he would not be a helpless, innocent child should enemies hear of him and come calling, implanting him with false memories of a, at least for what the Eternals consider, normal childhood and regular aging, in which her brother Star Fox filled in as the father. Genus, or again, Legacy as he was calling himself at the time when he went gallivanting around playing superhero, would later discover the truth of his origins, and while he did not necessarily resent his mother, things were a little awkward at first, and he would come to terms with it, referring to Star Fox as his uncle, even though he did have memories of Star Fox being his father. Still, the knowledge that his father was the infamous Kree soldier Captain Marvel, who, as I said, depending on who's running the Kree government at the time, is either celebrated as one of their great warriors or hated as one of their culture's great traitors. So, that's a little history lesson for you. History is written by who's currently in charge and their own personal preferences for how things should be viewed. Still, as Legacy, Genus, using his own version of the negabands that his father wore, as well as his own inherent eternal abilities, claimed he went out superheroing, but mostly just partied in a very hedonistic lifestyle, including spending time on a planet that basically existed just for the sake of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, as another old phrase went. Eventually, he did encounter Silver Surfer, and after a few adventures with him, Genus started understanding what it really meant to be a hero and made an honest go of it. Although, by and large, he was generally dealing with more localized threats and still struggling. He would eventually go on to show up on Earth and inherit the Captain Marvel name from Monica Rambeau once he felt like he had a good idea of what his father's legacy as a intergalactic hero was. Now, the big event after his initial debut for Genus, it's a problem with spring. Sometimes sinuses come at you. Biggest event in Genus's life was the Avengers Forever miniseries, the events of which are referred to as the Destiny War in continuity. Basically, this was a time-traveling escapade of a quest involving Avengers from various points in history, all powered by Rick Jones and his connection to the Destiny Force, which basically allows for low-level reality manipulation. Genus's part would be when he was pulled to this adventure as a future Avenger, who, among other things, was romantically involved with current Thunderbolt member Songbird, the former villain known as Screaming Mimi, and, more importantly, had become much more heroic and competent. However, recognizing this event in his own past, he dreaded it and what was to come. Specifically that during the Destiny War's final battle, Rick himself would become critically injured, and in order to save his life, Genus had to recreate the bond Rick had with his father Mar, and thus we had a bit of a flashback to the original Captain and his Bang the Band's body switching. Now, as should happen in any good events, the day was saved. Things seemingly went back to normal. That version of Genus went back to his own time. Unfortunately, during the events when he did have to switch in a lovely paradox where current Rick meets the Rick of the future, we see that Rick is looking older, missing an arm, and very bitter. These events would later be covered in Peter David's solo runs, where he basically wrote a story specifically to address the appearance of that Rick Jones and essentially deal with that time paradox of, hey, we know eventually Rick Jones and Genus are going to be pulled into the past for the Destiny War. He basically handled it in a couple panels of the comic after explaining Rick's altered appearance. So no, it wasn't that they're from super far decades in the future. Basically, Rick was artificially aged and critically injured. This would all be restored by the end of this volume. Actually, not even like close to the end. I think it was a good year or so. It was one of those things he did it for a couple story arcs and then fixed it because, you know, he's Peter David. He knew eventually Rick was going to end up like that because we'd already seen future Rick, so he dealt with it. Now, here's where it gets tricky. Now, the Avengers Forever miniseries set up Peter David's first run with Genus, the aforementioned Volume 4. See, in the present, Rick decided, heck, I've still got the bands. That older Genus seemed like a great guy. I did forget for reference, present-day Rick had actually met young Genus when he first went to Earth, kind of tracking Mars' journey as a great hero, and the two did not get along. So he was figuring, hey, let's go chill with the cool Genus. And Rick banged the bands as body switch happens, only to find out that he was now bonded to the present-day Genus, who himself found that he was now not only changed into the appearance, shorter hair, tweaked costume of his future version, but that his latent cosmic awareness, a gift that Mar had bestowed upon him as protector of the universe, had been awakened as well. This sets up Peter David's run where Genus has more powers and skills than he knows what to do with, is mostly adventuring on Earth, and is bonded with Rick, who tries to serve as a mentor figure while also being a bit of a smartass. The two engaging in kind of a, you know, I'm trying to phrase this properly, sniping at each other brotherly bond kind of nature, as opposed to the original Rick Mar bond, where Rick was a younger man and was very supportive of Mar-Vell, who's already a highly competent warrior in his own right. The big thing about the Peter David series is as time goes on, especially in Volume 5, they get very deep and philosophical, involving the nature of living up to a legacy and being stuck in your father's shadow when he is such a great man that everybody admires. Along with some other just general, what does it mean to be a hero morality issues. But more key is that cosmic awareness I mentioned. See, since Genus gained his cosmic awareness when he was a younger and less experienced person than Mar, Genus himself did not deal with it well. Basically, he had problems controlling how much awareness of all that is he would receive consciously, and over time, this knowledge of, well, I technically did good over here, but because I was over here doing this, I wasn't over here where some other people needed rescuing, and he had a nervous breakdown. Genus went insane. Now, it should be noted that between his negabands, which is basically quantum energy. The energy that makes up the nature of the universe itself, and thus is potential unlimited power, along with his own base eternal powers, which tend to give him a lot of super strength and durability. Once he went insane and had no, as most mortal beings do, desire to consciously limit the power he was tapping into, because, hey, I'm already insane, how can the power corrupt me? I'm already corrupted. Crazy Genus went through a lot of shenanigans, including spurned on by his and Rick's pseudo-girlfriend, pseudo-cosmic guide, Epiphany, unmaking and remaking the universe. This is where Phyla Vell's existence comes into being, as in the remade universe, Phyla existed, and she was one of those tiny little glitches that stuck around long term. Genus would claim to have regained his sanity, although he did suffer from it a bit more, but managed to be sneakier about it, so as the other superheroes did not try to intervene. Thus, the later issues mostly involve Genus struggling with his ability to do good, stay somewhat reasonably in control of his own mental faculties, also that he can be the hero that Captain Marvel has always assumed to be. Series ends with him having regained his sanity, broken the bond with Rick, and found himself working as basically a hero for hire alongside Phyla and their on-again, off-again ally Moondragon, who had attempted to teach Genus the mental maturity and, again, it's kind of hard the way to phrase this, but basically perspective that he needed to tap into his cosmic awareness without it overwhelming him. So the series ends with a bit of a meta commentary where Genus is claiming, oh yeah, look, I know I screwed up. I know a lot of people think I was a bad guy for a while. I kind of was. But it's okay now. I'm better. Rick, you're better. We're all happy. People won't forget me. People will call. People need me. Only to be told by the fourth wall bending cosmic character, Expediency, who, along with Epiphany and a couple other characters that showed up who's claiming to be siblings, whose names started with E, thus creating a beautiful satire of Neil Gaiman's Endless from his Sandman series. In fact, they refer to themselves as the Friendless, to really drag the joke out in front where everybody could catch it. But Expediency told him that, no, dude, nobody cared. They did forget you. They're done. They're tired of you. You're not interesting them. Which is about the only thing you can say when your book's gotten canceled for, technically, if you count the Fabian Nietzsche run, the third time. After this, Genus would show up in the Thunderbolts, starting with issue, I want to say 82. Yes, 82. Where he was almost immediately beaten to death, or at least he would have been if his powers hadn't resurrected him after spending a little time in a cocoon, similar to his one-time buddy Adam Warlock, who has a habit of doing that. Unfortunately, it was revealed later on that upon emerging from this and taking the name Photon, which, once again, caused him butt heads with Monica Rambeau, who had been using Photon, but then she went back to Pulsar, or went forward to Pulsar. But we discussed that in the previous video. Please watch that if you didn't. Genus would serve on the Thunderbolts for a short period of time until that, referenced a second ago, bad news came in, where Baron Zemo, who had currently been playing with some cosmic-powered artifacts known as the Moonstones, having grabbed 2 of them when normally only 1 exists at a time, thanks to interdimensional shenanigans himself. Zemo had attempted to, in order to attain control over Genus, who basically invited himself onto the team, partly because he had vague memories of, in a few different future timelines, marrying Songbird, who was still serving as a member of the Thunderbolts, and thus wanting to be around her, since she was, as I said, in any given dimension where they interact, a positive influence on him, and he did want positive influences around him to stay on the heroic and sane path. Genus himself, well, since he wasn't part of Zemo's plans to manipulate the team, had to be brought into the manipulation. So Zemo's like, well, if I influence his little cocoon healing thing, maybe I can achieve some kind of, manipulation of him himself by dictating the terms of his resurrection and inclusion on the team. But Zemo, being Zemo and a twit, accidentally caused Genus's powers, which, remember, as I said earlier, were connected to some of the primal building blocks of the universe, to specifically work by now siphoning energy from the end of the universe, which means the death of the universe was getting closer and closer every time he used his powers, or really, basically, every day he existed, even if he wasn't actively using his powers, because his very existence was tied to his powers. Thus, Zemo convinced Songbird to help betray Genus, and Genus was, through the use of several portals, chopped up into several pieces which were all deposited across the dark dimension, which is very large. Because Genus was functionally immortal since he was now tapped into the primal nature of the universe. This ended Genus's original tale. Now, I know that was a lot to cover. I don't touch on a lot of specific story arcs because, again, if you can find any copies of the old book, I really, really want you to read them. It is some of Peter David's best work. Even the 6 issues that Fabian Nizia got was really interesting reading, especially for the 90s. That was a time where both Marvel and DC were really doing a lot of goofy stuff. Fabian set a great foundation for Peter to build off of. Much props to both writers and, of course, all the artists that were involved in those issues. Avengers Forever is a really fascinating miniseries, not just for Genus's inclusion, but just Avengers history in general. I'll probably do a more detailed breakdown of that. I need to reread it before I go into super details of it, but it was a series steeped very much in Avengers history. And thus it is kind of one of those love it or hate it type stories. But yes, please go back, reread Genus's stories if you've read them before but haven't for a while. Read them for the first time, because when it all comes down to it, as I said, the story of Genus was a guy who found out his father was one of the great heroes in all the universe, didn't know how to deal with it, learned how to deal with it after inviting himself into the superhero community, found himself overwhelmed by his power and potential, struggled to carry on his father's code name while still being his own man, found friendship, found the occasional bit of love. Ooh, there is one storyline. I don't have the issues for it. It was tied into the maximum security event, so that gives you a reference point you can work back from, comic book fans. But there was a great storyline involving a Kree female villain who basically her existence and the fact that she was being victimized by the greater Cree culture serves as a wonderful metaphor for females being held down in society and just not being empowered, and certain surgical procedures that are only done to the female gender that are really ethically questionable in that happen in real world Earth cultures. Read it. It's a great arc. There's another arc involving time travel, Genus's crazy son, and Genus having to make a moral choice that would just wreck shop on anybody's mental health if they had to do it. Just wonderful. There's great work with Marlowe, Rick Jones' wife, characters that Peter David had previously written in the Hulk series. Just there's so much to it, and I really want all y'all to, if you can find some of these digital copies, or if you have a local comic shop and they have some physical copies, just grab them. Whether it's the Fabian run or the Peter David runs, grab them. Trying to track some of those one-shots can get a little trickier. As I said, that may be more of where digital comics can help you, because you can just search by character appearances. But I'm telling you, for 16 years, Genus has not been on the scene. I was not aware of him necessarily when he died, but I'd say probably for a good 9-10 years now, I've been waiting for his return. I was excited by the Captain Marvel arc and how much potential is there, knowing that the miniseries is coming. That has been written by Peter David, who is very familiar with Genus. I want to see what happens. Is this the Genus that was killed off in Thunderbolts? Is this a clone or time-displaced version? There's so much we don't know about the current status quo of Genus that arc opened up, and I'm here for it, and I'm excited. So let's do it. For now, though, I'm gonna see you in 7. Remember to like, subscribe to Roulette Productions. Hit that notification bell, because we have multiple shows. Some are on schedule, some are done as my partner and I get inspired. But regardless, you're going to want to know when they drop, because this is always worth checking out. For now, though, I'm going to let y'all enjoy your day. I'm going to do what I do. And every Friday, we're going to come together and we're going to ramble. Bye-bye, folks.